So welcome everyone. Welcome to the Maplewood Ideas Festival, celebrating the talent and creativity of our community. I'm Sarah Lester, the director of the Maplewood Library. It is such an honor to welcome Ibi Zoboi to the festival this year as the recipient of the 2022 Maplewood Literary Award. Ibi will be in conversation with our head of youth services, Jane Folger. This has been a fantastic festival event celebrating the talent and creativity of our community. We hope many of you will join us at 3:30 tomorrow here at Town Hall to welcome Mandy Gonzalez, Broadway star and author and star of Hamilton, for a family-friendly event to close out the festival. Thank you to the New Jersey Council for the Arts, the Friends of the Maplewood Library, the Maplewood Library Foundation, and Ibi is on the Library Foundation board, the Women's Club of Maplewood, New Jersey Council for the Humanities, and Words Bookstore for sponsoring our festival this year. And thank you to the staff of the Maplewood Library for putting this festival together. We're looking forward to breaking ground on our new library. While we're building for the future, please visit us at the Hilton Branch Library for Children's and Teen Services and 129 Boyden for Adult Services. And now to present the 2022 Maplewood Literary Award, Mayor Dean Daffis.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Good evening and welcome, everyone. Can we take a moment to salute Sarah and her entire team for bringing ideas back this year? Come on. So I have the distinct honor and privilege to present Ibi with a special proclamation, proclaiming April 28th, 2022 in the township of Maplewood as Ibi Zoboi Day. But first, a few things about Ibi. Ibi is a New York Times best-selling author of American Street, a National Book Award finalist for Pride, a contemporary remix of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich. She is also the co-author of the Walter Award-winning Punching the Air with prison reform activist Dr. Yusef Salaam of the Exonerated Five, and editor of Black Enough, Stories of Being Young and Black in America. Her debut picture book, The People Remember, received a Coretta Scott King Book Honor Award. But Ibi also writes for all ages. She's an award-winning author of books for children and young adults. Her writing has been published in the New York Times Book Review, the Horn Book Magazine, and the Rumpus, among others, and many others, in fact. Her most recent books are Star Child, a biographical constellation of Octavia Estelle Butler, and one that I'm reading, Okoye to the People, a Black Panther novel for Marvel. That's gonna be a movie, right? It better be a movie. She's worked for arts organizations such as Teachers and Writers Collaborative and Community Word Project as writer in residence and teaching artist in New York City public schools. Ibi holds an MFA in writing for children and young adults from Vermont College of Fine Arts, and as an educator, she is the recipient of several grants from the Brooklyn Arts Council for her community-based programs for teen girls in both Brooklyn and Haiti. Ibi was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and currently lives in Maplewood with her husband and 3 children. Before I declare and resolve today as Ibi Zoboi Day, a few other fun facts about her. When she was a kid, I told you I watched the video. Ibi looked forward to 2 holidays the most, July 4th and New Year's Eve. Not because of the reasons that you're thinking about, the fireworks and all that good stuff, but rather because during those holidays, there was an all-day marathon of The Twilight Zone on. She was a complex kid very early on. In 7th grade, she beat her peers and 8th graders in a spelling bee and even made it to, as a second finalist, right? A runner-up in the entire school district spelling bee competition. In 8th grade, she was hit by a school bus. Yes, literally hit by a school bus, and spent the summer in a body cast, essentially. She started out as a slam poet, spoken word artist. I know we have some awesome Mac scholars here tonight. Where are they? Raise your hand. Come on, some Mac scholars, there you go. Those of you who are spoken word poets, look up to her. You can be a best-selling, award-winning author yourself one day. Ibi is also into mythology, Greek and Roman gods. She tends to dress every day according to the mythology of that day. Today she's wearing purple because Thursday is the goddess of Jupiter's day. So, therefore, let it be resolved that I, Mayor Dean Daffis, on behalf of my colleagues on the governing body, the Maplewood Township Committee, do hereby proclaim April 28th, 2022 as Ibi Zoboi Day in the Township of Maplewood.
To present you, Ibi, and it's a plate that was made in Newark at Glassroots. It's handmade plate in honor of this incredible occasion. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll put it back.
For this card.
Yes.
Absolutely work. And we'll get you a nice framed version of the proclamation.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
You got it. Sure, come on up. It isn't. But
Thank
you
you.
could speak up.
This is amazing. Thank you so much, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I'll have to say that Maplewood is not the first. I have the key to the city of Summit. I did meet the mayor of Summit there, and I got a proclamation to that city. I did an event at Summit High School just a few months ago. But this means a lot to me because I live here in Maplewood, and this is also very, very special to me because I was born in Haiti. I moved to Brooklyn, New York, and then I moved to Queens and moved to Brooklyn again. And the home buying process a few years ago was quite daunting. And we tried and failed at purchasing a home in our beloved Brooklyn. But my husband and I were Caribbean, and we wanted to be within the Caribbean community, but things are changing in the city where we thought we could afford homes in a certain neighborhood, but we're being pushed out, essentially. And I've written about gentrification in my books for young readers. There is something to be said about growing up in a city and having dreams and aspirations of wanting to stay there and raise your family there, but different populations, for political reasons, we're not always allowed to be in the places that we are raised. Even the buildings and homes that we once remember are no longer there. As you may or may not know, they're tearing down brownstones in Brooklyn, and this is heartbreaking. But one fateful summer, fall, in 2019, I came across an old article at the time called "If Brooklyn Was a Suburb."
We're from Brooklyn.
I'm sorry, I have read and heard about all the Brooklynites moving into Maplewood, and I definitely was one of them. and because of the diversity, because of the progressive ideals in this community. I get my beloved Caribbean groceries a few blocks away. I was born in Haiti, so there are 2, 3, 4 Haitian restaurants to choose from just a few minutes from my home. And our home is beautiful, our block is beautiful. I've made some friends in my community, and even the owners, the previous owners of our home are here. Hi, Gloria, hi, Ron, and we are friends. My son attended Psalms, my daughter's at both my children are at Columbia right now. It is such a dear, lovely community, and I could not be more proud to just accept this award in Maplewood's name. It is an American dream, really. Some people call it, sometimes it's an American myth, but I can say that I could not be a writer in my home country. I could not make a living off of telling stories. And this is truly a dream come true. And thank you so much for that honor. And I'll be sharing more about myself and my writing journey during my interview here. Thank you so much, everyone.
That was great. That was great. So we can go on now, if we can get this on. You on?
Oh,
okay.
is it?
All right, hi.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
So thank you all and welcome for coming tonight. We're gathered to celebrate and recognize one of the world's most notable authors for kids and teens, Ibi Zoboi, who lives in Maplewood. I'm Jane Folger, head of Children's Services here at the Maplewood Library. And I'd like to just do a quick shout out and thank you to the Maplewood Town Clerk, Liz Fritzen, for moving mountains to make this happen here in Town Hall. This is the first time we've done an event here. And tonight we'll get a chance to learn more about Ibi's life and work. Then we'll open it up to questions from you, the audience. After that, you can have a book signed and get an Able Baker cookie. They made some special book cookies over there. So they could be pretty yummy. Let's see, and also copies of the books, her books are available outside at the words table, right at Jason's down there, waving. And if you can't hear us, just give us the ear sign and we'll lean in a little bit more. I remember how excited I was to learn that Ibi was moving to Maplewood. She's author royalty. One of the most important and exciting writers for youth in the 21st century. She's a literary icon, a warrior, a leader with the ability to create powerful words, stories, and characters that speak to us all. Ibi's work is about finding yourself and your truth and understanding the world with new eyes, and her genius is recognized around the world. Among the many awards and accolades are Black Enough was shortlisted for the Carnegie Medal in the UK, and it's also on the Schomburg Center's Black Liberation Reading List for teens. This is a list of books that are essential reading in Black culture. There are only 23 books on this list, including John Lewis's March, Ibram X. Kendi, Jason Reynolds, among others. It's a very high honor. The New York Times described her work as self-assured, elegant, and utterly captivating. Star Child, one of my favorite books, was described as a one-of-a-kind masterpiece of literature. Ebony magazine named the Zoboi's family the coolest Black family in America. You may know that series, that profile that they do. And then Jason Reynolds, who's an award-winning author and the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, said it well, and I quote, can I read the whole thing about punching the air?
Sure.
Okay, then you can talk. Stories, at their best, will break something old in you or build something new. Remarkably, Punching the Air, which is what he's writing about, does both. Zoboi and Salaam have created nothing short of a masterwork of humanity, with lyrical arms big enough to cradle the oppressed, and metaphoric teeth sharp enough to chomp on the bitter bones of racism. This is more than a story. This is a necessary exploration of anger and a radical reflection of love, which ultimately makes for an honest depiction of what it means to be young and Black in America. So pretty High praise. Do you read your reviews?
I read the blurbs because they do come from my colleagues, but reviews are hard to read.
Really?
Yeah.
They're so good.
Good or bad, you just want it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's one question, and I really want to know the answer to this, is you've published 10 of perhaps the greatest pieces of literature in the last 5 years. Like
you.
10, is that about the right number?
That's almost there, almost
Okay.
there.
Is this your normal pace?
I don't know
You know-
what my normal pace is. I've only been published for about 6 years. Before that, you know what? I think it is because before getting published, I was practicing. I was always writing. My family can tell you for the last 20 years, and always trying to get published. And in trying to get published, I'm trying new things in order to get in through the door. So, which is also why I write different kinds of books. But I did get an MFA in writing for children specifically, and I intended to write picture books, middle grade books, and young adult novels in different genres. So it is work. I call it an immigrant work ethic, where there's a little bit of guilt that comes from being an artist and probably getting compensated more than my husband, who is a high school teacher. I write about teens, and my work is of more value than him working with teens daily. So I feel like it's not about the money, it's more about he goes out every day and has to deal with the emotions, what young people are going through every single day, and I live in my head. And I feel like, okay, I gotta write, I gotta do something to not be what I feel is lollygagging all day, but it is the writing process. So it's a hint of work ethic and guilt, where I can't believe I can make art and be valued in such a way. So I'm still grappling with what it means to be an immigrant writer, where in Haiti, writers would be sent to exile. No matter what they wrote about, writers were taught to be political, even if they're writing romance. So that is part of why I keep up with that pace. Thank you for asking that.
Are you starting to sink in that you deserve it? I mean, is that
I don't
sinking in
know. So there's a conversation now with women of color where we're pushing back against this idea of imposter syndrome, where we're not supposed to feel that. We're supposed to acknowledge that there have been systemic reasons why we've been left out of spaces or getting accolades. So as I said, I've been writing for 20 years and trying to get published. I don't think I was any less of a writer 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's just that, as Mayor Daffis read, I was a quirky, cerebral kid who loved science fiction. And as a Haitian immigrant, I think publishers didn't want me to be that. They wanted the immigrant narrative.
Oh, yeah.
And my first pieces of writing were fun fantasy books.
We have Dark Matter right there. It's
that's from 2004. That is my first published piece.
Is that really?
Yes.
It's really good. Yeah.
Thank you. So I wanted to write, and I'm not a special snowflake loving science fiction.
Okay.
I just was an 80s kid
Yeah.
who watched a lot of TV. And just because I'm an immigrant doesn't mean I could participate in pop culture and, and share that with the world too. So I loved pop culture. I loved all the, the sci-fi. I loved, Twilight Zone. And I wanted to write that. I'm like, Twilight Zone, but Haiti?
Yeah,
So, but, and that was a hard sell about 15 years ago. Star Child, yes.
Well, I'm going to jump around on the questions
Yeah,
here
of
because
course.
you're a really interesting person to talk to. But your work has a lot of themes from your life.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah. American Street, youth comes to America from Haiti, just sort of the American dream and American nightmare, I kind of look at it a little bit.
Yeah.
Pride, taking place in Bushwick, which is the remix of Pride and Prejudice. And after reading My Life is an Ice Cream Sandwich, I had an aha moment where I thought, I know you better. Is that an okay thing
That
to
is,
think?
that is. The books don't seem connected, but then if you do, the only thing that connects them is me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
Right,
true.
you're
But
right.
also just sort of like little clues about
Yeah.
the things that are important to you. But this book,
Yeah.
this is Star Child, a biographical constellation of Octavia Estelle Butler. And you may know her as one of the greatest science fiction writers of our time, and you're a big fan.
Yeah,
And-
and I met her, I studied with her.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a
Okay.
minute. But when I read the jacket copy that said, a genius whose novels and short stories continue to challenge and inspire readers around the world. Well, this is about Octavia Butler, but that also describes you, I think.
I'm
there's-
working on it.
I got so much in here that I'd love to talk to you about, but this book is magnificent. It's magical. It's poetry interspersed with historical context. Anyway, so what did I want to talk about?
I do want
What do you
to
want-
share
yeah.
that you may have seen me running in with my suitcase. The work that I do, and I didn't think that this would be part of my job as young writers, and I think anyone who's a reader now needs to know this is a huge aspect of our life. I don't know what adult writers, I think adult writers do events, right, or colleges.
Yeah.
I do a lot of school visits. And of course, during the pandemic, I wasn't traveling much, but a lot of my school visits were online, and I have serious Zoom fatigue at this point. So a few months ago, things were opening up, and I got a bunch of invitations, and I said yes to everything because I was ready to go, right? And some of my schedule got mixed up because I'm just like, yes, 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 I'll go. But one of the places I always say yes to is red states. If I'm invited to a red state, someone read my books, someone read my bio, someone knows who I am and did the work to get me there, and probably had to get the approval of a board or the administrations or whomever to compensate me and bring me there. So if it's a red state, knowing the cultural climate of our country, I make sure to go because someone saw the value in me and my work, and for me to speak to those students there. So aside from the writing and all the reviews are great, but this is a bulk of my work. Being in Charleston, South Carolina this morning, and talking with the students there who have had some racial dynamics things happening there, because certain things in our country are emboldening certain worldviews. And the librarian worked hard to get me there at the very last minute and have me talk to the students who desperately needed a certain worldview to drive a point home. There is a lot of book banning across the country in certain districts. And I went to a charter school in Charleston, and they're a charter school, and I was there because they are a charter school and can decide what books to read. So the librarian there is just a diamond in the rough, and making sure that they get diverse authors to come to the school and raise money and compensate us well. So I just it's not just about writing, and the pace of it is also, on top of that, is visiting and talking with young people across the country. And I do less school visits here in New York City and more in the Midwest and in the South.
I love the intentionality of going to places that might be really white or just not have other cultural influences, or just
Right.
vote the
Yes.
way.
And even if they're diverse, the young people are isolated. I was in Charleston proper, I was in Folly Island, right?
Oh, wow.
James Island, Folly Beach, James Island, which was like a good 30 minutes outside of Charleston. So they're on an island with the marsh around it and are isolated, not only physically, but in ideas.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they got me there, but I was there. I've been to very rural parts where I feel lonely and scared. at times, but when I meet the kids, I see the value in the work that we all do, children's book writers.
So when you go, do you do a writing workshop? Do you talk about your books, or what? How do you sometimes format the visits?
So they're all different. This one involved the whole community. They invite the local detention center administrators to come and sit in. So there was just a whole, from different parts. I don't know why there were just as many like school administrators as there were juvenile detention centers there. Wow. And parents and community workers were also there. And it's a presentation, and I love this one because I was able to step out while they unpacked my presentation amongst themselves. And they had students leading it. Some other times I'll do a affluent school, a Title I school, a library presentation in the evening, and then I'll visit a juvenile detention center, which is always jarring. And you see the full gamut of, the struggling communities, the affluent community, the adults who come in the evening, which are usually the retired people in the community, and then you see the incarcerated. And then I have to go home and just like figure all of that out and probably write it into a book.
You're good at thinking on your feet, though, I think.
Probably, yeah. I've had to.
And you're also, to me, like, I call it a cosmic connector. Like, you connect people and ideas in an incredible way. And what I see is like weaving people and ideas together. For example, just reaching out to Octavia Butler when you did that cold call, which you might want to mention to people, putting together Black Enough, which is an anthology of the rock stars of literature for kids. And I mean, I want to know everything. How you edited it, how you edited these great writers, how you got them to join this, even in Punching the Air, which is a novel that everyone should read, written by Ibi and Yusef Salaam, who is one of the Exonerated Five. Absolutely beautiful, moving. And then working with Disney and Marvel to do Okoye to the people. Do you want to talk about connecting? How you do this? Is it happy chance, or, I mean, you get up at 5 a.m. to do this every day, or
No.
like?
I try. I don't think my family knows when I write. They're like, another book? When did you do that? The books also tell the story of needing to support myself and pay the taxes here in Maplewood.
Listen to that, yeah.
I am a Black woman writer, which means that I always want to talk about the economics of being a writer. It was something relegated to people who had time, and by virtue of having time, having money, and something I didn't have early on. And my husband supported me on a teacher's salary, my dreams, from the very beginning, sending me to workshops and stuff. And it's very hard because I knew that it would happen and was the only thing that I could do. So I mention that because with each project, you have to write it and you get an advance and you have to wait for the next installment to come in. And while waiting, you're just like, I could be doing something else. I'll slip in a picture book. It's contract work. I don't have the wherewithal to write a great American novel, one great American novel every 5 years. Some people are able to do that, whether their partners support them or trust fund or what have you. That is a reality. Or they lived in more affordable communities. I want to be able to write, which also means I have to keep working. And the supplemental part is doing the school visits. So this is a job. It's art and it's also work. So something like working with Disney is an opportunity and not necessarily art. It's fun, but it's a lot of work because I don't get to be very creative because there are rules in the Marvel universe.
Oh, yeah.
I learned a lot about intellectual property I'm trying to make up things, and they're like, no, that is not how the Marvel Universe works. So it was a learning process for me, and it's an opportunity to, okay, you get income, you get paid for it, to something to hold me over while I work on something that I really care about that takes more time. So my first books were all about buying myself time in order to write. For anyone who does anything creative, you're not getting paid while you're creating the thing.
Right.
And it's not until you have the finished product that you have to wait on somebody else to determine its value. And even not just the publisher, but the public to determine its value. And I don't have the luxury to wait. It's getting stories out. And I write different kinds of stories because of my New York City upbringing. Yusef Salaam, I met in college. If you all familiar with the Central Park 5 story, I learned about that story in elementary school. And I went to Hunter College for my last 2 years of college, and he walks into one of my classrooms. I was the editor of my college newspaper, and I went after him for a story, and we ended up talking and became friends, and I ran into him again and wondered why he was selling his self-published book of poetry when people should know his story. And this was before the Netflix series, and we talked, and I said, I write for young people, we need to tell your story. And that's, the rest, as they say, is history. So all of these are chance meetings in my life. It does tell the story of my life. And I can't just write one thing. I can't keep writing 10 books about the immigrant experience, because that is not just my experience. It is growing up in New York City, being a Gen Xer. Being a Gen Xer in New York is very, very interesting. It's very particular.
I want to hear about this sometime.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And this morning I was just explaining to the young people about Rockefeller drug laws, and how there are young people who are incarcerated because of that, and now it's been legalized, and what do you do with all those people? So, and then learning, and I know about that just being a New York City kid.
Yeah.
So money and art, that's constantly in conflict, for me at least.
Very interesting. And your drive to write, did you always have that, or was it a desire to create yourself, to express yourself? Where did that come from?
Yeah, that came from being an immigrant. So when people ask me, well, what books did you have growing up? I say I did not have books in the home, and that's true. And it's not a woe is me narrative.
Yeah.
It's simply because my mother, there's a language barrier there. And it's not to say that my mother was not well-read. She was very well-read. She was a broadcast journalist in Haiti. She was well-read in French. And in trying to learn English, she's not buying me French books. And in Bushwick was where I spent my childhood in the 80s, if you know anything about New York City in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, lived there.
Yeah, it's a book desert.
Yeah.
And even the libraries were not well-funded.
No, they were terrible.
Right. So the libraries, I will patron a bookstore before a library. I want to visit the library more, but it wasn't part of my upbringing.
Yeah.
And I think there's some trauma around that, because I can count on one hand how many times we did go to the library, but there was anxiety about returning the books because of the fees.
Yeah.
So we kept them. My family knows I have 3 books from my high school library that I never returned.
Oh, let's see.
I think we paid for them because it was a Catholic high school. But
They wouldn't let you graduate probably without.
That's true.
Like, yeah.
But as a librarian, in certain communities, the fees are, cause a lot of anxiety for certain families. So it's like, do we go return them? And then we'll hit we get the fee, and then we keep them, and then the bill comes, and we'll move, and they won't find it. Because at a certain time, before Amazon, where do you go to buy books? In certain neighborhoods in Brooklyn, there's no mall. There were no bookstores. I know there were some independent black bookstores in Flatbush, but certainly not in Brooklyn. I think the Bronx had its first bookstore not too long ago. It started with the Barnes and Nobles, and then then now we have a couple of bookstores there that are, there's a literary scene happening. But before that, book deserts were huge in New York City, and libraries were not always safe spaces because I think librarians had to babysit youth librarians, and people drop off their kids and stay there after school, and then all sorts of things would happen.
And that's when a lot of people are also released from mental hospitals and places like that.
Yes, and libraries are a safe space. But for a young girl there, it's, you don't go off in a corner and read a book alone. So for me, I hoard books. I will buy them and have anxiety around returning them. So I think I need to do more work in libraries just to heal that trauma.
Yeah, we'll desensitize you somehow. We've gotten rid of fines now, so
good. Good.
It's eliminating some barriers.
Right.
As we can. Maybe we'll get some ideas from you on.
Events recently in Brooklyn, we ended up using libraries to do programming with young people. I taught poetry workshop, getting grants from Brooklyn Arts Council, using the spaces there to interact with the youth there in the libraries.
Your Instagram is really amazing.
Oh,
it's
no,
awesome.
No. I don't do reels.
No, it's really good, and it's colorful, it's lively, it's vibrant. It makes me feel good to look at it, and it makes me. There's one picture of your studio, and it's such a creative space, and I just wondered, how do you create an environment that nurtures your creativity? Physically and spiritually? I mean...
Oh my, well, this is, being here in Maplewood is a dream come true. My husband will tell it. I think I had a Pinterest board of my creative space. That wasn't, coming from Brooklyn, to have a writing space in Brooklyn, no way, that I could not have imagined it. I thought the most that we would have is a corner. But I have a whole attic it's my apartment, and it's all yellow. I needed that to write the stories that I'm about to write, or about to publish. It's a room of one's own, and I have that 8-9 books into my career. You've heard that essay, A Room of One's Own.
Virginia Woolf.
Yes, Virginia Woolf. I worked towards that, and that was only possible through publishing books. I could not have had that before publishing books. And this is where art and money comes for women artists. A few years ago, there was a documentary called Who Does She Think She Is? I don't know if anybody watched that.
That's really good.
I remember watching that and crying. I was like, I need to make art, but I got kids.
Yeah.
And that is a huge, you got to balance that out. So just being in Maplewood and having, my husband's an art teacher. He has his art space, and then the kids have their own space. And I have, I bought the house because of that space there, and I was able to see it as my creative. I needed that creative space. It's physical, spiritual, and mental to be able to do what I do.
Yeah.
I'm getting emotional about it.
It makes me emotional too. It's somehow you get to an inner place of confidence and authenticity and strength in your writing, and it seems like in your person. I don't know if you're an insecure person or not, but just what you have to say is so powerful.
Thank you.
And really reaches a lot of people.
I'll tell you where my insecurities are.
Okay.
Instagram reels.
Well, do you have help with your Instagram? I mean, do your kids film you sometimes?
Yeah, they do take a picture of me, but now they the
you throw in
goalpost
those
is
books?
always
Yeah.
changing.
Yes.
You think you get comfortable with the pictures, now you got to do a 30-second commercial for everything. With music.
Well, wait till you have to do TikTok, right? I mean,
I can't do
Yeah.
that. My head will explode.
so with all you do, I mean, you really are an incredibly hardworking writer, and you're traveling and everything like that, and keeping up with social media. I mean,
No, barely. I'm not
yeah.
on Twitter. I cannot.
Okay, yeah, you know, your Twitter's a little old.
I can't do a dissertation every day.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
in
yeah.
240 no.
That could change soon anyway, right?
Oh, yeah, thank goodness.
So, what are you working on now? Can you talk about that?
Yeah,
Or-
I was while stuck on the tarmac for 2 hours. I was
Stressing out,
I'm
yeah.
so sorry because I probably
Oh, no.
smell like airplane.
No,
Yeah, I was revising my next book. I am getting deeper into the stuff that I want to write. I am writing a Black girl whose father is a radical separatist leader, and what does it mean when you have to balance out your girlhood, right? It's feminism versus race.
Is this like Nigeria Jones?
Oh,
or,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
how'd
this
you know
like
that?
I read it.
That is. Oh, yeah, it is. Oh,
So,
that's a
but
short
you're
story.
going to kind of like
Yeah, it's a
expound on
whole
it more.
novel.
That's a really great
Right.
story.
And I'm
Yeah.
connecting it
And-
to the U.S. Constitution. It's framed as a U.S. Constitution, and whether how the Constitution applies to some and not others. But when you are part of a marginalized group, where do you fit into the Constitution that's supposed to protect your rights?
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to read it. So
Yeah.
a whole novel?
Yeah, I'm in the last stages of editing, and
Prose?
It is,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. And it's very hard to do that while doing everything else. And sometimes I drop the ball and let them drop and just,
Yeah.
I can't do it all. So my art comes first. It's not just my job now, it is my livelihood.
Thanks to the NAP ministry, we can like rest a little bit.
Oh,
right?
you're familiar with the
Oh, I
NAP
love them. Yeah,
ministry?
yeah.
Everyone should pay attention to the NAP ministry. Gen Z has got it on lock. They're like, don't want to do anything anymore. Nobody, we're not paying student loans anymore. So I'm following Gen Z who are like, we will do nothing and get paid everything.
But I mean, we won't get into that. We can do that some other time. But yeah, I mean, just the whole colonial pressure and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But
which is what I'm writing
Yeah.
about, just pressure to do more when you're not compensated for doing the more. And it's not just monetarily, just, it's a hard piece of work to work on.
Sounds like a good conversation.
Yeah.
So I think what we'll do is wrap up, maybe ask some questions, but what I would really like to thank you from the bottom of my heart is for being such an extraordinary observer of the world, for helping us find a part of ourselves, for us to see the world differently, and thank you for sharing your gifts and giving us the courage and the dance steps to change the world. Really want to thank you.
Thank you. Those are
yeah.
beautiful, beautiful words. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you so much for everyone who came out. And thank you, Mayor. Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for Ibi?
Yes.
Is there any passage you'd like to read?
Is there a passage you'd like to read?
Oh, I hope you would.
Yeah, can I borrow your book?
Please do.
Yeah.
Ignore all the Post-its.
So Octavia Butler is the first Black woman science fiction writer. And I loved her Parable of the Talent, her Parable series. And it resonated with me because I was always thinking about the end of the world as a child growing up in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
I watched the 6 o'clock news all the time, and I think you all remember the Latchkey Kid. I was home alone, turn on the news, and it was doom and gloom every single day. And then I had some very religious aunts who would talk about the end of the world, and those two ideas, and Twilight Zone. So I was just obsessed with Octavia Butler. I met her, I studied with her when I was in my early 20s, and we have the same birthday.
May I just interrupt right
Yeah.
now with an anecdote
Yes.
where you got her phone number and you called her out
I
of the
did.
blue and she answered?
Yeah. I because we had the same birthday, I'm like, we're kindred spirits. I had to meet her, and I did. So this is a poem about being a writer, and I started a poem about being a domestic worker, which her mother was. My mother was not a domestic worker, but she was a nurse. And there is a labor-intensive aspect to being a nurse versus being a writer. Like her mother was a maid, a live-in maid, and I called that poem Dust. And my mother was also a home health aide very early in her career, where she would take me as she cared for the elderly, and I watched her do that work. And here I am doing sit-down work in my imagination, typing up imaginary worlds, and that's where the guilt comes from too. So this is stories. Let me read Dust, and then I'll read stories. Dust. There were lots of babies after the war. New mothers needed a helping hand because there was always work. The buses packed perfectly starched white uniformed mamas and grandmas and aunties and big sisters into rows and columns of cradling arms, of a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, a soft sweet hum, and a nightly lullaby. But when the day settled beneath the covers of night and the buses rested their weary, roaring engines in the town's lots, home was like the moon, far, far away, but full and round, like a warm holiday meal after weeks and days of counting down to rest, to break, to pause the work. So Mother Octavia stayed on the place, lived where she worked, the breakfasts, the lunches, the dinners, the teas and coffees, the night fevers, the day tantrums, the spills, the muddy footprints, the mending and sewing, the fixing and polishing, the yes ma'ams and no sirs were all in a day's, a week's, a month's work. And this is describing Octavia Butler's mother's work. Now this is called Stories. Stories. There were lots of stories after the wars. New writers needed a pen, a typewriter, a notebook, because there was always work. The newspapers, books, and magazines packed perfectly inked and curved letters against white paper backdrops, words and their meanings, stories and their characters, metaphors and prose, sentences and dialogues, exclamation points and question marks into rows and columns of booklets and pamphlets, movie scripts and articles, short stories and novels, interviews and textbooks, and a people's forgotten history. But when the day settled beneath the covers of night and the writers rested their weary, inquisitive heads on pillows and on desks, the imagination was like the sun, far, far away, but full and bright like children's laughter in a playground after hours and hours of counting down to rest, to break, to pause the work. So Octavia Estelle wrote her stories down, made her imagination her life's mission, the aliens, the planets, the shapeshifters, the empaths and telepaths, the early morning drafts, the late evening rewrites, the rejection slips, the doubts, the pay per word, the contest fees, the editing and polishing, the thank you ma'ams and please sirs were all in a day's, a week's, a month's work. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
Yes. Be an observer of the world without commenting yet. I think there's a lot of opinions out there, and I think the greatest superpower a writer can have is to be a great observer first. Watch. I pay attention. I may write Maplewood into a novel. I love that Soma Lounge, boy. And right, the lounge. And the moms group. This is fun, good stuff. And it's simply observing without judgment. First and foremost, and if the judgment comes, it is to say something about our world and humanity, and not any individuals or their choices. something to say about the world. But observing is also reading too. So reading, observing, and writing for yourself first. Thank you for that question. I think did you have a question? Oh.
I wanted to hear more about the cold call to Octavia Butler.
Oh, well, that. Look, yeah. Well, you got to understand, it was 2000. And the New York Times bestseller was accessible, especially a sci-fi writer. Well, she wasn't a New York Times bestseller back then. They were accessible in the same way. Now, we're accessible online, but you know, she was just like, "Hey, how are you?" And I was like, "Oh, hey."
Plus, you finagled giving her a ride back to her.
I did.
Workshop, yeah.
She came to a bookstore in Brooklyn, and she needed a ride, and I was like, "I'm going in the same direction." I wasn't, and I was that sort of fan. Like, I wanted to reach out and have a meeting of the minds, if you will.
Yes.
Do you use someone as a reader before you send it to your publisher? And since you have so many different kinds of writing, do you have different people that you would ask to read your work before you send it to a publisher?
Yeah, they're right there. Yeah, they do read my work, especially my kids. I always, my daughter's in college, I had to start paying her. But for young people, and especially my husband who works with young teenagers, I'm like, do they still say this? Do they? So I do get feedback from the people who live with me in my house, who see me just like trying to work out ideas all the time.
Any other questions?
Yes.
There's this, obviously Black enough, each story is sort of about how do you find who you are as a person, right, and be comfortable in your own skin. And sort of similar to what advice do you have to an aspiring writer, what advice do you have to young people to get into that place maybe earlier in their lives than we all did?
Being comfortable in their own skin? Oh, I think you have to go through the motions. You have to do high school. High school is so hard. Sorry, guys. I think it is getting through it. I think the way we do high school in this country is terrible. I think we like funneling kids through like these double doors and teach them about life, and then we hope they make it through. But there's so many skills that are not taught in our schools. And it's not just social skills, interpersonal skills, life skills, soft skills. As a parent, I realize like there are so many gaps in their learning that our society thinks you're supposed to get that at home, but we're so busy working and we don't remember. And I think, you know, now people just go on YouTube and find out basic things. My daughter was leaving from college and I'm like, oh snap, I forgot to show you how to iron a shirt. And you know, I saw her struggling to write it. And I didn't think like you need to learn how to iron and not burn a shirt. And you know, and I'm like, I think people steam now. I don't, you know, the technology changes. So there are things I've forgotten to teach my children, like basic things that we do without thinking, and then we don't pass along certain soft skills, life skills, emotional coping skills.
Empathy.
You know, we forget as adults too, because we're figuring it out ourselves, and we assume that they're going to learn it in school when they don't. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I think I answered your question. Yes.
What book did you have the hardest time writing?
What book did you have the hardest time writing, if you didn't hear that in the back? Yeah.
It's a book that I'm writing now because I have space now. I go into my writing space, and it's because I'm bringing up deeper ideas. I'm digging deeper, and I'm doing that soul excavating work to make art. And I want to be able to do that in books for marginalized children, to be literary and highbrow with heavy concepts. My editor keeps calling it ambitious, And, and it is, I think it is. And I had the time and space to be able to do that. And yeah, so it's hard, and I made it hard for myself. It's challenging.
Well, can I ask, are the ideas harder or the words, getting the words down? Like which is harder?
The ideas are hard because I put in everything that I thought I knew in there. It's
well, the Nigeria Jones, that story is very
complicated. Well, it's more late. I have a girl being homeschooled, and she's going to a Quaker school. And in presenting a Quaker school, I'm bringing up Quaker ideas and radical ideas that founded this country versus the radical radical community that she's coming from, who is allowed to be radical. And it's set in Philadelphia, and it's based on the MOVE organization, if you know anything about the MOVE bombing.
Yeah.
So a community, so you have the Amish who live, their lives, but can a marginalized group try to do that too and say, we don't want any part of this, can you leave us alone? And is that group allowed to do that? And what happens when a girl is contending with those different kinds of freedom? So it is that idea.
This book's going to blow our mind, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't know. It's blowing my mind, and that's my job. Meaning it's hard. I'm not necessarily patting myself on the back. I want to say something that is challenging for me and hope that it will challenge young readers too, first and foremost.
Well, you're not afraid of a challenge or big questions.
No. I feel insulated being in a community like this.
Yeah, it's a bubble.
It is a bubble, and that could be good or not good. Yeah. It's good for me to be able to, come home and watch nothing happening outside my window. And I go to the Soma Lounge and I'm like, yeah, we have some issues. And then I put it in my book,
Huh. Any other questions?
I want to thank everyone
for coming. I want to thank Ibi for flying such a long distance to get here.
Really.
Outer space or,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, really. Thank you so much for everything. And congratulations on Ibi Zoboi Day.
Thank you.
Happy Ibi Zoboi Day.
Thank you so much. Where can I get a meal? Where do I get a meal?
Are you hungry? Yeah. We've got some cookies from Abel Baker up here. Ibi will be happy to sign any of your books if you want to up here at this table. Maybe give her a chance to get a cookie first or something. Or I don't know. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, everyone. That was amazing.
You are.